Next up, we have a speaker who is going to get us charged up, I have no doubt. Joseph Byrne is also an inspector with WorkSafe, and he's in the construction team, but the reason for the awful dad joke is that he's a licensed electrician. He completed his electrical training in the Pilbara and spent more than 25 years on the tools as an electrician, electrical supervisor and leading hand throughout Australia and overseas. He joined WorkSafe in 2020 following an electrical incident and injuries to a workmate while working on the same construction site. And it also says in his bio that he's got 5 kids, so he probably deserves a round of applause just for that. Joseph's going to talk to us about electrical safety.
Thanks, Andrew. Firstly, yeah, it's great to be down here in Bunbury. I'm privileged to be here. I feel privileged to be here. It took me 20 minutes longer than I expected, but I've heard that that's about to change. As you mentioned in the bio, Andrew, I'm an inspector with WorkSafe in the construction team, and I'm based in the Perth metro area, so I jumped at the opportunity to get away from the big smoke. You're probably thinking, yeah, they could have got an agricultural inspector to do this presentation, and yeah, you might be right. There's not much in this presentation that you will find shocking. Okay, I won't use any more electrical puns, I promise. Yeah, like you said, I'm a qualified electrician, and I've worked all over Australia and Europe for about 25 years in mining and residential, shipbuilding, and even on farms up in the Gascoyne. I joined WorkSafe about 4.5 years ago on the back of a dangerous incident involving electricity that resulted in serious burns to my workmate. In the time I've been with WorkSafe, I've realised that WorkSafe is not the enemy, not the opposition. WorkSafe's role essentially is to support industry by administering, enforcing and promoting the work health and safety laws. And as such, here we are as part of this safety forum. Going off topic for a second, some of you that have an interest in Australian history and bushrangers might recognise the name Joe Byrne with a Y, maybe not. Well, I share the same name as Ned Kelly's partner in crime. True story. Look it up. I'm not here to rob you. I'm here just to provide some information, a lot of which you've already heard, and a lot of which is common sense. I've heard it said that common sense doesn't exist anymore, but I disagree, especially in the farming community. I would say that the hardest thing about having common sense is dealing with people that don't have any. All right, let's get into it. Electrical safety. Establish good farm safety practices. It's the law. If farming is your business, you're a farmer who has workers on your farm, you're what's called a PCBU. It doesn't mean you're a robot like R2-D2. It means you're a person conducting a business or undertaking. And that means you're subject to the requirements of the work health and safety laws. We now here in WA essentially share the same laws as the rest of Australia, except Victoria, who operates still under the old OSH laws. Classic Victorians. We invented AFL. Just kidding, Victoria. One of the biggest changes from the old laws to the new is the penalties. For breaches of the law that result or contribute to a serious injury or death at someone at your workplace, depending on your role, you could be charged with industrial manslaughter, with the maximum penalty of 10 years jail and a 20 years jail and a $10 million fine. I'm telling you this not to scare you, just to reiterate the importance of establishing good farm safety practices. The work health and safety regulations state that a PCBU must manage risks to health and safety associated with electrical risks at the workplace in accordance with Part 3.1. Part 3.1 are your general duties: identifying hazards, managing the risk by using the hierarchy of control, and maintaining and reviewing those controls. A common term used in the world of safety is risk assessment. Assessing risk is something that we do every day, whether walking down some stairs or reversing a vehicle or even lifting some shopping into the back of the car. You're assessing what could go wrong if you do it wrong. Unfortunately, with electricity, it's something you won't see, hear or smell, but you will feel it, and you could end up dead very easily. That's the risk associated with electricity. They call the voltage that's used to supply your home, to power your lights, appliances and equipment, etc., they call it low voltage. Low voltage is 50 volts to 1,000 volts. Death by electrocution is most common at voltages greater than 100 volts. Our home outlets, as I'm sure you all know, are 240 volts, and some of you may have three-phase outlets at 415 volts. That being said, there have been fatalities with voltages below 50 volts. And factors like your own body's natural resistance and at what stage the compression of your heart is at can be the difference between life and death following electrocution. Also, you could be on a ladder and receive a boot or a shock whilst trying to do something and fall and break your neck. Don't try and fix an electrical issue yourself. Get a qualified licensed contractor electrician to do it. Trust your gut, use common sense and contact your local Sparky or DMERS, WorkSafe, Building and Energy, or your network provider like Western Power, Horizon, etc. Okay, let's take a run through some of the things you can do to minimise the risks. Identify unsafe electrical equipment. You must ensure that electrical equipment is regularly inspected and tested by a competent person. Firstly, a competent person regarding electrical equipment is someone who is qualified, certified, for example, a licensed electrical contractor. As far as regularly, that's kind of open to interpretation. That being said, electrical equipment that's used in environments in which the operating conditions are likely to result in damage or a reduced lifespan, including moisture, heat, vibration, mechanical damage, corrosive chemicals, etc., that could lead to cracks and damage in the outer casings and the protective sheets, and will allow water or moisture into those internal electrical components. Obviously, these environments would typically require more regular testing. Some of the images on the slide there, you can see that the good old tape, insulation tape. I see the inner conductors on one of those extension cords are exposed, so you've only really got a couple of mil of rubber there protecting you. It looks like the earth pin on one of those plugs has been filed down, which I've seen a few times, welders doing that. This is not good for the welder, obviously, because it's designed to have a bigger earth pin to allow for fault currents. You'll also avoid the warranty as well. And the other two pictures up there was a lovely lady. She liked to call that spaghetti junction, but I call that a fire starter. And also you'll see a lot of domestic, there'll be equipment that's specifically designed for domestic use only, and it'll be written on there. So make sure the equipment that you use is fit for purpose. RCDs, residual current devices, or safety switches. Everyone in this room should by now know what an RCD is. If not, where have you been the last 10 years? A circuit breaker or a fuse protects the cable. RCDs are designed to protect you. RCDs will, when properly installed and maintained, provide high levels of personal protection from electric shock. You must ensure that any electrical risk associated with the supply of electricity to plug in electrical equipment, such as using a socket outlet, is minimised by the use of an appropriate RCD. RCDs also need testing, and anyone can do that. The easiest way you can do this is by operating the test button on the front. Different brands will have different test buttons, so familiarise yourself with your RCDs. I believe Building and Energy have put out some information, and I think even an animation recently on their website about testing RCDs. With both electrical equipment and RCDs, you must keep records of the testing until it is next tested or removed from use. Switchboards. Electrical switchboards do require maintenance. Keeping them clean can not only ensure they function correctly, but it also keeps them safe. They should have a lid or a door, and the escutcheon covers and panels should be securely fixed with no gaps where you could fit a finger or make inadvertent contact with the live wires inside. Plus, closing the gaps will stop dust and dirt and moisture ingress, and which could potentially affect the functionality of the components inside the switchboard. It also stops mice and vermin and other little critters causing damage. You'd be surprised at the amount of switchboard covers I've removed. Remember, I'm licensed to do so. Only to find the fault is now fried mice or a crispy gecko. Keep switchboard access clear. In the case of an emergency, you'll need it, and make sure your switchboard is correctly labelled. You don't want to be fumbling around switching things on and off in an emergency situation. You can see on one of the slides, I don't know if many of you still have it, but the older type of switchboards with the porcelain fuses, they're slowly being phased out. The wiring rules prohibit electrical workers from using semi-enclosed rewirable fuses to replace semi-enclosed rewirable fuses. So if an electrical worker comes across one of these, they've got to replace it with a fuse, replace the fuse with a circuit breaker. And those panels, the black panels, they're often asbestos. And we're all aware of the dangers of asbestos. Building and Energy have recently published a fact sheet that provides guidance on switchboard panel repair work and asbestos safety. Portable generators and batteries inverters. Generally, portable generators can't be used as a portable unit supplying from their inbuilt sockets, and also as a supply for for a structure, a building, like a tool shed or whatever, and then also be used in other places. If you get an electrician to install a power inlet so that you can plug your portable generator into a building, they need to modify that generator, and that modification, what they do is they remove what's called the MEN link. That makes it unsuitable for use anywhere else. With the push in renewable energies, inverters and batteries are becoming more common throughout regional WA. They're easy to install, quiet, and require little maintenance. But they also have hidden dangers. Lower voltages and much higher currents. The available fault current in a regular battery energy storage system can exceed 20,000 amps. And that's the equivalent of dropping a spanner across the terminals of 200 car batteries joined together. Therefore, they must be installed in a suitable location, not like the one in this image. They've got to be properly protected from mechanical damage. Much of the mobile machinery on your properties doesn't have great parking capabilities, so backing into an unprotected battery system could be catastrophic. The fires are extremely difficult to extinguish, and they also emit toxic gases. As with all plant and electrical equipment, you must ensure that it's installed, operated, and maintained as per the manufacturer's instructions. Power poles. You must ensure that a worker or any plant or material used or controlled by a worker does not enter what's called in the regulations the danger zone of an overhead electric line. Those distances are prescribed in the regulations, but essentially it's 1 metre for low voltage, 3 metres for high voltage, and 6 metres from transmission power lines, which is 33,000 volts and above. Check for overhead power lines before starting work. If you don't know the voltages, find out. Contact your network provider. Same for the underground utility cabling. There's information available like before you dig Australia. I think it's Byrne. It used to be Dial Before You Dig. And apps like Look Up and Live Australia. They're available on the internet. And by the amount of people online today, there's no excuse. Western Power also have an online network mapping capacity tool as well. To reduce the chance of incidences with power poles, you can consider using plant and machinery that is unable to reach the danger zone. You could move your plant or structures permanently away from overhead power lines. You could erect a physical barrier and signage to prevent plant, equipment, or a person entering the danger zone. Or you could contact your network operator to de-energise or isolate the overhead line for the duration of the work, or to permanently relocate the overhead line away from your work area. If you're unfortunate enough to be operating farm machinery and you make contact with an overhead power line, stay put in your cab if possible and call for help. If you do need to get out of the vehicle, the machine, don't just step down. Jump from the lowest point of the machine and land with your feet together on the ground. Then you've got a kangaroo hop until you're at least 8 metres away. I would do a demonstration, but I'm sure you can imagine. The machine is conducting the electricity into the ground, and there's an electrical field that gets weaker the further away that you are. There's a thing called step potential. And when one foot is in a higher charged area and the other is further away at a lower charge, your body will become a circuit, a path for the electricity to flow. And as you can imagine, this doesn't end well. Be aware also there's a chance that the machine's tyres could explode as a result of such an incident, even hours after without warning. This is called pyrolysis. It can happen with lightning too. So stay well clear of the machine for at least 24 hours. The previous farm forum last year, I believe a building inspector provided energy regarding the responsibilities of power poles. This is an area that's regulated by Building and Energy, not WorkSafe, but as a quick memo, the network operator is responsible for their assets and cable up to where it makes its first connection to your property's electrical equipment or wires. A power pole on your property, unless it's part of the network, is a private power pole and your responsibility, regardless of who put it there in the first place. If you have any concerns regarding power poles, or even if one of them has a sag that you're unsure of, call the network provider and they'll quickly let you know if they can do anything, or if you need a licensed electrical contractor to check first. Okay, so just to recap, provide and maintain a safe work environment. You can do this by inspecting and testing regularly and keep records of those tests. As far as equipment, if in doubt, turf it out. That's what my old boss used to say. Check the location of overhead and underground power lines before work starts. I'm sure all you farmers are very familiar with the land you're working on, and often this familiarity can lead you to stop noticing the hazards around you. You must notify WorkSafe immediately of an electric shock arising out of the conduct of your work. And lastly, please, no DIYs. Don't do it yourself when it comes to electrical work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Just before you run away, I have got one question here. This might go slightly outside of what our legislative framework is from a work health and safety perspective, but you might be able to answer it with your Sparky's hat on as well. If a worker is injured by equipment that isn't in the time frame stated on the test and tag, does this leave the employer liable financially and criminally?
I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer that. Yeah, it depends on what the history of the records were. You know, if it's a few days out, I mean, you know, you've got to be reasonable in certain situations. But yeah, depends on what time frame. You know.
We might have to take that one on notice and perhaps get somebody from Building and Energy to have a look at that one for us. And I've got another question here. If there is an electrical incident or an accident, do I contact WorkSafe or Building and Energy?
Both. Yeah.
Simple answer.
Yeah.
Same overarching organisation, but yeah, reach out and contact both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.